I was driving with my daughter and my mom, and I just couldn't wait to get to the destination to have a drink. And I just knew that I had a problem. It was just so crystal clear to me that I was struggling.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. On the ATFW podcast, we usually focus strictly on the business side of the industry, growth strategies, innovation, and leadership. But since it's Mental Health Month this May, we're taking time to spotlight the stories that underscore why this industry matters beyond the bottom line. Today's guest is Anne Marie Chaker, a former Wall Street Journal reporter who became a professional bodybuilder and author of Lift: How Women Can Reclaim Their Physical Power. In this conversation, she opens up about her experience with addiction and recovery, and how rebuilding physical strength became a foundation for reclaiming her life. For those of us in the business of fitness, it's a clear reminder. The work we do isn't just about building brands, it's about creating the conditions for people to rebuild themselves. Before we get to the episode, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcasts weekly featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. I'm your host, Krissy Vann, and this is ATFW. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you, Anne Marie. And one of the things that I appreciate so much about your story is sometimes we end up in places we don't even intend to be. And in your case, you didn't set out to become a bodybuilder. It started as a way to pull yourself out of a tough time. So for those in the audience that aren't familiar with yourself, what was stacking up in your life? What was the catalyst?
Yeah. So thanks for having me, Krissy. My story starts, I would say, just before COVID, the year 2018, 2019. It was like every single bad thing happened in my life. I was struggling with postpartum depression. When my father suddenly died, he lived a few doors down from me, and just walking to the dog one day, had a heart attack. And just a few weeks after that, my marriage was over. My husband left, and it was just every truth in my life within months had kind of been upended. And I had never been much of a drinker before. I just didn't really like the taste of it. But I started having just like a little half glass before going to bed, just because I wasn't sleeping. I was so wired and depressed. So half a glass before bedtime turned into a full glass, and then several glass. And it just pretty soon I was addicted to this stuff like medicine, and I was just drinking all the time. So all of this came to a head when I took my daughter to her ice hockey tournament, and I was driving with my daughter and my mom, and I just couldn't wait to get to the destination to have a drink. And I just knew that I had a problem. It was just so crystal clear to me that I was struggling. We ended up in the hotel where we were staying, unloaded the hockey bags and everything. And I don't know what possessed me, but I stepped there was like a little fitness room or wellness room. And I saw this woman in there, and she looked like such a badass. She was just one woman in this little fitness room, and she was approaching her workout like nobody's business. She was lifting barbells and pulling bands. I'd never seen anyone work out like this. And she was sweaty, and she was checking her, watch, and she knew what she was doing. And it was a combination of like her know-how and her intensity and her focus that I looked at her and thought, I want that. That is what I want. I just want to be like her. So it was just this moment, and I went up to her and I asked what her deal was, was she training for something? What was her sport? And she said that she did bodybuilding competitions, which I thought sounded really weird. I'd never met anyone who did bodybuilding competitions. But I was intrigued, and she gave me the name of her coach and suggested that maybe like I could work with her coach, not on bodybuilding, but on nutrition and exercise programming. And so when I got home, I gave this woman a call, and I started working with this online coach, and everything changed after that.
Yeah, without question. I want to highlight a couple things that you said there. Number one, obviously the discussion on social media is getting so much bigger, but in the age group where a lot of friends are having children and foraying into motherhood, I think kudos to you to just being open about your journey with postpartum. The more conversations, the less alone people feel. And I just know
Right.
that for their experiences, it always has been incredibly isolating. The second thing is speaking about alcoholism. I'm somebody that within my own family unit have dealt with it. And I think that anyone that has been on the exterior and hasn't experienced it, they think that it's a certain person or a certain personality. And
Mhm.
that couldn't be further from the truth. At the end of the day, these substances are so accessible, and when you're going through deep pain, and to your point, life was throwing everything, including the kitchen sink at you, it's very easy to be like, I'll just do this to numb this evening. And then before you know it, it starts to add an exponent. And so I think just highlighting and being open to sharing is so valuable. But all of a sudden, you have this catalyst moment of this woman in this gym lifting weights, and you feel that spark of inspiration. It's one thing to be inspired and decide you want to change. It is an entirely different thing when you decide to be the change. So, can you take me back to the moment when you first stepped into the gym and what made you stick with lifting?
Isn't it interesting how these moments in our lives, I think about that moment, it's really a moment that changed the trajectory of my life. And I don't know what the lesson is from that, whether it's, you know, maybe it's pay attention to the micro moments or, you know, if you feel inspired by something, it's easy to just maybe brush it off because lives move quickly and we're off to the next thing. But if you feel an ounce of inspiration or someone connects with you, really kind of let it speak to you, I think, really pay attention to that. And I remember after meeting her, I had been an athlete before. Growing up, I was sporty and I was a figure skater and I loved, and I had just kind of lost touch with it. And I went back to our room after meeting her and I just kind of looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, what happened here? Where am I? What happened? And it was just kind of this realization that it doesn't have to be this way, right? Like nothing ever has to be this way. That just because it's this way right now doesn't mean it has to be this way forever. And um, the wonderful thing about bodies is that they're malleable, right? We can change them. We can change things. So I don't know. There was something about that moment and going back to my room and looking at myself in the bathroom mirror and feeling like just having almost kind of like this talk with myself and this realization that like, she's doing this. I can do this too. Doesn't have to be this way. And let's go. Let's get started on something. So
I love that, especially because one of the things you talk a lot about in Lyft is how women have been conditioned to take up less space. This
mm,
happens in so many different facets of our lives. So, what's the first step women can take mentally and physically to break free from that mindset and start embracing something like strength training?
yeah. So it's interesting because what happened to me, there was such a visceral change in my life when I started lifting weights. And, my coach, well, a couple things happened. One is we really looked at my nutrition and we saw that I wasn't eating enough, which was interesting because I think a lot of women are conditioned to be thinking dieting. We have to be eating less. We have to be smaller. And when we really started looking at, keeping a log of what it was I was consuming on a day-to-day basis, it was like so far from adequate. I was basically having coffee in the morning, then, just consuming whatever came off my little one's plate, and then going to wine at night, and then just same thing day in and day out. So we started really amping up my nutrition with a real focus on protein and really feeding my body like an athlete. So that in combination with going to the gym with a focus on strength training, she wasn't even putting me on any cardio machines. There was no cardio involved whatsoever. It was introduction to strength training and the big composite lifts and learning, how to hoist a barbell and dumbbell. So there was this sense of moreness and consuming more and taking up more space. It was really so different. And what happened was I ended up with this boost of confidence. Everything in my life changed. I was treating my body like the athlete. I was wearing lipstick. I set up a Match.com profile. I met my future husband. All of these incredible changes started happening in my life. And there was no question in my mind that it was related to the strength training. So the journalist in me was like, there's got to be something here. I was so intrigued by this obvious connection that I started delving deeper and into the history of what the skinny thing is all about. Where did this come from? And what I found was that the true essence of women's bodies is that we're strong. We live longer than men. Our bodies are incredible. We bring life into the world. And early women were buff and badass. It's only in fairly recent times that we have been conditioned to think about thinness and taking less space and being more childlike. If we go back to that OG body, that's where it's at. So I became really interested in this bogus skinny ideal and how really the secret sauce to everything is muscle.
The nice thing is, especially in social media arenas, this conversation is really starting to bubble and foster. And I have to give shout out largely to a lot of the Gen Zs that have really embraced. They're one of the biggest growing sectors that we have walking into fitness facilities at this point in time. And to your point, I think they learned a lot from the sins of our past. I was the daughter of a mother of diet culture who was perpetually on a smoothies only and the cabbage soup diet. And that filtered into my teenage adult life until I also discovered gym and weights. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have fueling your body in excess. And obviously there can be many factors in regards to obesity, but there is an obesity epidemic. And at the end of the day, we've lost sight of fueling our bodies to be active and live our lives. So on that note, I know that there's still a large number of women that feel intimidated. There's that gym intimidation, especially the intimidation to not just hit quick start on a treadmill, but to your point, hop on and lift some weights, or they think it's not for them, or God, the one that we've tried to abolish, it's going to make me bulky. So what would be a simple, approachable way for someone to start strength training, even if they've never lifted a weight before? What would you say to those?
So I think one of the cool things about gym culture right now is how many more women there are in the weight room, even from the time I started this journey, which I guess now is 6 years ago or so, 7 years ago. There were very few women in the weight room. I was usually one of the only ones. And I just feel like in the last 5 years, I think we're almost 50% of us are present. And it's just wonderful. I had this cool experience the other day where I was at the squat rack and I was kind of struggling with the last rep. And this woman came over and she gave me a spot. And I looked at her and I was like, that's so great that she felt able to do that. And I don't know, it was just this cool moment that I feel like wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. So to start, I think gyms are wonderful. I think they can be places of community. Usually when you join a gym, you get a freebie session or two. So definitely take advantage of that, if only to learn, where things are, learn a few lifts, get a sense of, how to structure your own program. And then something I've started doing recently is just to get to know the other women that come. And it's funny, I don't know what it is for us as women. we've been conditioned to be a little bit competitive with each other. I feel like just because we've grown up in a system where there's only 2 seats at the table for women. And so we've kind of, I don't know, there's always kind of been this vibe sometimes in gyms of like, giving each other the side eye or whatever. And I've had it with that. So I make a big point of like, just being the weirdo who introduces myself to, or like trying to, start small chat or whatever with just to get to know the people that show up regularly. And you know what, it makes all the difference in the world. So I would encourage women, especially if they're fairly new, just to kind of see who else shows up regularly and say hi, and force yourself to take some classes, get to know some of the instructors. If there are group fitness classes, they can be fun. And just to kind of start to feel like you're part of this community, it makes you come back more and more, I feel like.
Without question. And I have to say, I don't think that is the weirdo move. And if it is, we need more weirdos because at the end of the day, everyone had their first day. And I think it's so important that we remember that. And to your point, oftentimes that demeanor that can be put on, yes, due to societal conditioning, but also it can be protective of self. No one wants to feel rejected. And what you find when you put out that olive branch and break a barrier by introducing yourself or saying hi or offering to be that spot, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be received very well.
Yes.
There might be that 1%, not the right day, not the right time, headphones on, head down. But aside from that, I do think that you find that camaraderie. And at the end of the day, we know that exercise gives us all those feel good endorphins. So you don't encounter many jerks. People are feeling good. But I know.
You never know if you're going to be that inspiration for someone else. All those years ago, that random woman in the gym, like, became this, life-changing force for me. So, keep that in mind. I would say, often when, it's new year and there are all these new people coming to the gym, a lot of us, oldies are like, oh, everything's so crowded, but you know what, embrace it. And maybe, somebody will be looking up to you. So it's all good.
That's so very true. We know it's not just about building community and confidence, though. There are some real benefits when it comes to long-term health, and something that your book definitely highlights, including how it protects against aging. So what are some key strength training things that it does assist us with? Especially, I know there's so much more conversation around perimenopause, menopause. Women are now tracking cycles and how to work around their period. So what are some of those long-term benefits?
Yeah. So we lose muscle as we age, and I've just turned 50. So it's something that like I am acutely aware of. My body now is different than when it was at 48, 42, like little percent every year. I feel like, little twinges or things get harder, a little stiffer. So sarcopenia is the word for this muscle loss that happens as we age. So the other thing is, so you want to have like as much muscle structure as possible from the get-go. And it's also like never too late to start trying to build muscle. So the other thing that happens is, especially for women, is we lose bone density. And muscle is the ultimate protector, the ultimate cushion of bone. So it's just having more muscle on your body can help protect against falls, accidents, mobility issues that happen as we get older. So it's really the ultimate thing that you can give yourself for longevity and quality of life. So I think that's why there's so much attention right now on perimenopausal and menopausal women and strength training. But I also just love the idea that what you mentioned about the feel good. There's something about lifting weights that for me is such an allegory for capacity, capability. Like, I learned something from a power lifter I interviewed, which was that she visualizes in her every lift of like lifting all the crap of that day away. And she was saying that it's such like a powerful visual. And I've started doing that, and I can't tell you how powerful it is. That it's lifting for me is not just a physical feat. It's also like a psychological and kind of almost spiritual thing that takes me into another dimension.
You're
I wish
basic.
for all women. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say you basically give yourself a blueprint and this evidence for your life. I like how you say this capacity, this different focus, because by sticking to it, consistency obviously being a huge component, you then can use that same gift you've given yourself there in all other facets of your life. To your point of putting words on paper and writing a book, that's a feat of consistency. Nobody has anything to your head to say, you have to get this done, but you had the evidence to know I can do hard things. I can push myself. I can accomplish. I may have moments of failure. Everyone that's ever started lifting weights, you reach that failure. I still remember the first time I ever laid on a bench and learned how to do a bench press, and I had 2 5-pound weights that were shaking all over the place, having trouble keeping form. It's laughable to me now in my journey, but at the time, you build and build and then you create that evidence. And to your point, it's beyond physical, it's mental, it's our social health. Yet at the same time, even with all of that being true, women still struggle with guilt around prioritizing their own health, especially if they have families, demanding careers. So, what advice would you give them in regards to making strength training a non negotiable?
It is so hard. And yeah, we have so many demanding priorities in our lives. I've 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 had these early, kids coming home and like dinner, and stepping away because 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening, the only time that I could make it to the gym. And oh, mom, you always go to the gym, and it's just they're gonna live. They're gonna live. The kitchen's a mess. The laundry, like everything's a mess. I guess I would say it's okay not to be perfect. Like, if the house is a mess and the kids are whining and they don't want you to go, they'll live. Just make it a non-negotiable. It's as important as brushing your teeth in the morning. And I think it's also important to, it's hard, right? Especially now, it's like cold and we don't want to move. We don't want to get in the car and scrape the ice off our windshield and get to the gym. And it's like, I really think it's important to make yourself do things that you don't want to do for yourself, like getting uncomfortable and moving your body. It's not necessarily something that, it's not like we're going to a spa, ladies. Like this, it's like, it's a drag, or can be a drag. But I guarantee, like, the moment I start moving, when I get in there and I just make myself do one thing. I just sometimes tell myself, just start, just move, just do one thing. And I immediately feel better. And I listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger talk the other day. I went to the bodybuilding show in Columbus, and he said something like, when he goes to the gym, it's like he started in like black and white, and then by the time he comes back home, it's like everything is in color. And that really stuck with me. I feel that very deeply. Like, it starts in black and white, and then by the time I get home, it's like I have a totally new outlook and I feel so much better. So,
well, and to your point, maybe just elaborating on that, because yes, women struggle with guilt. They need to carve out the time. And so let's say they are the busy mom or with the demanding career, all the rest of it. Why is putting your health first imperative? Because you're already saying it works. Why is it so imperative that they carve that out? Really, I just want to, if you had a message to abolish that guilt, what would it be?
Yeah, it's like putting that oxygen mask on for yourself first. You can't take care of other people if you're not well. And it's a hugely crucial part of your wellness is your strength training, feeling strong, being strong, taking care of yourself. You can't be there for others if you're not taking care of yourself. So make it a non-negotiable. Get uncomfortable, feel better. You're going to feel so much better.
It's so true. It's basically that counterintuitive. If you haven't been doing it, you don't think that's
Yeah.
going to be how it goes. And 100% that's where you land. You mentioned at the very beginning bodybuilding. You see this woman never really that familiar with the territory. Now you've quite literally written the book on it. So I'm curious, because you took this journalistic approach, what were some of the big standouts for you? I mean, you mentioned that one woman that gave the metaphor about lifting the crap off, but what were some of the other ones that really stuck with you, or something that you learned that you went, oh my gosh, how are not more people talking about this?
I was drawn to the bodybuilding world because it was just so different from the kind of staid black and white office kind of newspaper culture that I inhabited. What I loved about it was the competitions are such, I mean, there's such a circus of like bikinis and fake tans, and they bring people together from all walks of life. So, you know, I feel like I'm part of this community of people, and we see each other, you know, once a year for various competitions. You see people come back. There's always a little bit of drama. You see the same coaches and competitors. It's just a really wonderful world, and it's just, I don't know. There's something about, I inhabited such like a wordy, like intellectual space, and this was all about bling and muscles, and you know, it's like almost like a middle-aged ladies like beauty contest or something. So it's just fun, and I've learned so much about like bodies and the effect of nutrition and protein, and you know, and how these bodies can be malleable, how they can change, and how you can, through good habits and nutrition and consistency, you can really build the body that you want to inhabit. And I just think there's something so cool about that.
Without question, I have competed myself, and it was exactly, I think I was that kid that never, my parents didn't have money for a lot of extracurriculars, so I was
Yeah.
like, "There's an opportunity for me to get dressed up and do this thing?
Yeah.
Yes, sign me up." It was so much fun, and
Yeah.
it becomes such this test of mental resilience. But
Yeah.
on that mental health note, we started this conversation where you were in the thick of life. Things thrown at you. I mean, it's so wild to me how often we invest in worry, yet it's always those things that sideline us out of nowhere. Those are the moments that really knock us off our feet.
Yes.
And sometimes life delivers in multiples. And then what do you do? Because you're only one person. And if you don't have foundations to hold on to, our coping mechanisms often not the healthy choice. In your instance, it was that glass of wine that then all of a sudden started to multiply.
Mm-hmm.
As you now reflect on your journey, how has it changed your mental health? Because I imagine you probably feel like several different versions of yourself being able to sit here today.
Mm. Say the main takeaway, Krissy, is that nothing is ever and I've hit hard times since that. Like, you know, I lost my job, you know, last year, and that was really hard. You know, working at the Wall Street Journal was like my entire identity. And, you know, nothing has to be forever. Just know that just because you're in a funk now doesn't mean that it's going to be that way, you know, a few weeks from now. And sometimes the worst thing to happen that you think is happening can also be kind of the best thing. You know, I was so sad when, you know, my journalism career ended. But then like this book happened, and I'm meeting all these wonderful people and getting to do these wonderful shows, and I have a radio show on Sirius that's going to start soon. And so all of these kind of wonderful things started percolating. So I don't know, if you leave yourself open to the universe and just don't give up on yourself, and know that just because things suck right now doesn't mean they're going to suck later. Nothing is ever forever. And just keep lifting, just keep moving, even though sometimes it can be hard if you're going through a hard time. If you just take yourself for a walk, talk to people, reach out, it's going to get better.
I truly believe that things excavate out of our lives, and we often don't know why it's happening to us in the moment, but I truly feel they excavate to make the space for what's coming. That's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah.
Put into those things, you're kind of at the moment thinking, what the heck? Come on, life. But it was making space for exactly what you've accomplished here. And in regards to what you've accomplished, obviously at time of recording, we're in pre-order. So can you tell people how they can get their hands, when can they get their hands on this book?
Yeah. So the book is called Lift: How Women Can Reclaim Their Physical Power and Transform Their Lives. And it's published by Penguin Random House. It is on pre-order now, which means you can order it through all the channels, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and what have you, Target. And it will hit shelves on June 17th.
Amazing. Well, Anne Marie, before we got on here, I said a huge congratulations to you, because I know we mentioned it through the podcast as well. It's not easy to accomplish something when really the motivator is self. And we know that motivation comes with the doing, and then to keep going and do the doing is often a huge challenge. So congratulations to you to bringing this to life, and thank you for sparking inspiration into us and encouraging us to keep lifting.
Thank you so much, Krissy.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Krissy Vann. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.